Hello YouTube and welcome back. We're going to talk about something that's near and dear to all of our hearts, dually. So this is dually builds using the 3 worst cores. So this question came up in Twitch chat. We were talking about the fact that the MMR system is kind of strange. When you get into legend rank, it's kind of strange. So for those of you who don't know, you can concede on day 1. You can actually concede at any point where you have 0 losses, and you will not lose MMR. What that means for dually gamers, or people who want to climb or only want to high roll and don't want to play out bad builds where they didn't get their silver trebuchet on day 1, what that means is if your day 1's bad, before the PvP, you can just concede. So if you want to climb, go do that. But I don't know why you'd bother climbing in a closed beta environment where the ranked system is so strange to begin with. But I digress. So what do you do when you get the 3 worst cores? So let's talk about it and talk about what you can pivot to, what you can keep an eye out for. So we've got this handy dandy teaching device here, and we call them the 3 red cores. And they're the 3 red cores because when you're looking at the box, they have this dirty, disgusting little red number up here that says, like, you know, how much weapon damage it deals. And weapon damage is pretty bad right now because, first of all, it relies on alpha ray, which is not necessarily bad in and of itself, but you should note that alpha ray is bugged because alpha ray is not a ray for the purpose of buffing other rays. But I digress. So that's not why it's bad. It's bad for a couple reasons. The monster loot, all those scraps that you get, they give you like +4 poison and +4 burn and +4 this and that. The burn ones and poison ones, those are persistent damage, and the numbers get very high very, very quickly. The ignition core builds, in my opinion, are the best builds for dually right now. And then, in the opinion of people who don't play dually, they're probably complaining most about Lizard, because Lizard is completely disgusting once it gets up and running. So these are like the 2 big bads, which means that you'd like to be playing Companion Core and you'd like to be playing Ignition Core, right? So what do you do if you don't get that? We're going to talk about the 3 worst cores, the red ones. If you're asking about, like, what about the other cores, because there's 6 of them, we have 3 bad ones, 2 good ones, and then we also have the armored core. My general recommendation for armored core is pray. Or you put your armored core on the right side, you build the rest of it as if you were playing ignition core with like an omega ray and stuff, and then on the right side you put duct tape, and then like your build's fine. It's not as good as ignition core, but like it does stuff. So you can either, like, if you're playing armored core, you can either play the force field stuff if you have a variant of that you enjoy trying to make work, which is good. Like it can work. It's got a lot of support skills, but you need to find those skills. Or you can just play it like this with your armored core near the right side with duct tape next to it. So when it comes to the red cores, what can you actually do? So we have 3 of them. We have the core, which prior to this patch was probably my favorite core because it was so flexible in the kind of stuff that you were able to do with it. The next one is the one that started lowest, on my opinion, which is weaponized core. And the third one is one that is slowly, I've been appreciating it more and more, which is the crit core. So what are the 3 differences between these? They all have the components where you use something on the left and it charges up the core, which is to say Companion Core is the only outlier in that regard. And then what do they do for the stuff on the right side? The core charges things on the right side. The weaponized core gives plus damage to weapons on the right side. And the crit core gives plus crit to items on the right side, but it can also double proc from items on the left side if the items on the left side crit, which is unique and interesting. For Reynad or, you know, the devs, if they're out there, I would love to see weaponized core have more spice added to it. I think this right here is a sufficient amount of spice. I think it's interesting to have double procs with crit core if you can get crit items on the left side of the crit core. This is the most boring core. I think there's very little going for it that's particularly interesting. God, what builds can you play now that you're here? You're faced with a decision. Yeah, crit core. Crit core charges itself when it crits as well. Good. The fact that all three of these cores deal damage means that there is an archetype out there that you ought to know about. It is the motherboard archetype. So the motherboard archetype is based on a bug. I don't know to what extent it's a bug, but I'm just going to call it a bug. So motherboard is a medium item. It says when the core gains crits, give it plus 20 damage. Or give it plus damage. Or when it gains haste. When the core gains haste, give the core damage. What it actually means is that when any item gains haste, give the core damage. Which means you can metronome 2 other items and they will give flat damage to the core. So just motherboard plus a whole bunch of haste items is a completely appropriate way to build any of these things. You can pair that with, honestly, you can literally pair this with Lizard if you want to, because Lizard, I don't know if you know this, it actually has the word haste on it. And if you're building items that give haste, and motherboard gives haste as well, and if you're using a metronome to give haste, and you have all these haste items, maybe a haste skill, you could also have Lizard in this build. It's a possibility. I've done it. I actually ended up dropping Lizard because I got an Astrolabe. We'll talk about that later. But in any case, yeah, motherboard is an important build for you to know about because all three of these builds can pull it off. Crit is the best for it because it has crit built into it. But legitimately, you can play any of those as the motherboard build, and it's totally fine. Next, what else can you do? So on the weapon core, technically you can do this on any. So this is any. Let's write any here. Let's go right here. Any. I guess let's go. This is any. Craft crit. How about this? Like that. First crit. The next one that we'll talk about is, I use orange. What color? Pink? I'll use pink. The next build you ought to know about is Proboscis. Listen, this is a big step down, but I feel like it's really not that far away from being a real build if another item's introduced, or if something gets buffed or changed, or if weapon core gets buffed. The issue with Proboscis, which is a small item that has no cooldown, and it says when you slow, deal damage to the enemy. The worst part about Proboscis right now is that you need to find the Proboscis and also find the other components of your build to make everything tick. Because like you need an alpha ray, you need the alpha ray to be leveled up. You need cool LEDs, which have no tag. And sometimes you just don't fucking find the cool LEDs. So you need Proboscis, you need the alpha ray, and you need the cool LEDs. And none of those, I guess Proboscis has a weapon tag, but those other two don't have tags, and sometimes you simply just don't find them. However, putting a Proboscis on the right side of the weaponized core is a real build when it comes together. It's more of like a thing that you can put in your back pocket that you ought to know about. If I had a motherboard instead, I would definitely rather play a motherboard, but it's a synergy, and it's honestly, it kind of strikes me as the only thing that weaponized core does particularly well. I don't know what else you would do with weaponized core that isn't just a worse version of something else. Because you want to put weapons on the right side of weaponized core, and the weapons you want to put on the right side are like pulse rifle, missiles, maybe Tesla coil or something. Just like But those items are also fast items, and you'd also really like to have them on the left side of Alpha Core. So like Weaponized Core is kind of like a worse Alpha Ray. Kind of. Right? It kind of is. An item that could be introduced in order to make Weaponized Core better would be an item that charged from the right to the left. So Fiber Optic is an item that says when you use your leftmost item, charge the rightmost item. But if they're an item that said like when you use your rightmost item, charge your leftmost item, then I could see Weaponized Core having more support because of what I just explained. Funnily enough, there actually is an item that fulfills that requirement. It's called Rivet Gun. And Rivet Gun is not really something that you'd use with proboscis, but we're going to talk about it anyways because we're kind of talking about Weaponized Core right now. Rivet Gun in a Weaponized Core build is really interesting because it lets you put a fast weapon on the right side, and then it also charges the Weaponized Core instead of, you know, having your fast item on the right side basically do nothing, right? Consider this. The rays that exist right now, like the burn ray and the poison ray, they let you put all of your items on the left side of the core in order to charge up your core as fast as possible. So you get, you know, anything that works with the core. Cool LED works with your core. All of your rays work with the core. When you use the core haste an item, everything works with the core, right? And all of a sudden, your core is super fast, and you like put a bunch of cooldown on it because cooldown is very easy to use these days, especially if you get something like a knee brace. So, having anything on the right side of the core kind of sucks because you don't get that synergy that we just described. But Rivet Gun, if it were more common, or if there were like a new dually item introduced to the game that had text like this, I would keep an eye out for that because it would certainly open up a lot for Weaponized Core in particular. Also, please buff Weaponized Core, it sucks. Speaking of proboscis, other things that you can put on the right side. Things that proc, like Tesla Coil. Shut up. Tesla Coil sucks. If Tesla Coil got buffed or Weapon Core got buffed, I could see Tesla Coil being a thing. I don't think it's a thing. I've had some really good enchants on Tesla Coil. They're all pretty bad. So just like, I don't know. Don't do it. Another interesting one to keep on your keep on mind is kind of like proboscis. Proboscis is good because it's small. It doesn't get in the way of using other items. But another proboscis adjacent item is Electric Eel, which is a large Vanessa item. I wouldn't play it in ranked if I were trying to climb, you know, sub 300 in legendary. But if you're just messing around and having a fun time, that's a real build. That's fine. Someone in Twitch chat just said flamethrower. Yeah, I'll sign off on that as well. Flamethrower is nice because it turns weapon damage into burn. Call this flamethrower. There. I guess this is like not so much proboscis. This is just Weapon Core. All right, so like we talked about eel, flamethrower, right? Line item number 2 is just I picked Weapon Core. Whoops. Still, I think Motherboard is probably still just the best thing for you to be doing. All right, so Weapon Core. Okay, all of these could just be I'm cooking, hold on. Wait, what's this? What did I just do? Those grid lines out of here. Home, select. There, like this. So any of these cores, could just be Omega Ray, right? You could have a very good time just playing Omega Ray on all of these cores, right? And you'd be very happy with it. But these are just like other things that you could be doing. Okay, so what else can you do here? I think another archetype to keep on your mind, which we're going to highlight in green, is actually poison. So let's just write poison here, right? And poison's interesting because it's not only lizard, and sometimes you get to do some really fun stuff. So poison has a skill. I think bird has a skill too, but poison's more interesting. When you poison, gain crits, and then there's also when you slow, gain crit. And having access to skills like this makes Chem Snail really interesting. And like this is another one of those things where, like, you know, okay, so Monitor Lizard's fucking insane, but at the very beginning of the game, it's hard to get Monitor Lizard ticking unless you have a bunch of sources of haste. And if you don't have a bunch of sources of haste and all you have is like Monitor Lizard plus like a cog or a GPU, your build's not going to do much, and you're just going to get run over by people who are playing better builds. On the other hand, Chem Snail plus cool LEDs, and then just like a bunch of fast proccing items like an Uzi, Uzi, Aiden, anything that has a 4-second cooldown, you know what I mean? Any light bulb, is a pretty real build. And then like you can always transition into a Monitor Lizard build later, but just Chem Snail by itself, he charges when things are slowed off of cool LEDs, which means that he's a much better battery than Monitor Lizard is. So you get to use the core more often, which means you get to slow more often. Like Chem Snail, he's really good. Like he's garbage compared to Monitor Lizard, but Monitor Lizard's about to be nerfed. Chem Snail, given the fact that Chem Snail's active ability is the poison instead of the passive ability like it is for Monitor Lizard, means that it can crit. So like playing a poison Chem Snail build on crit core is actually pretty good. You have a lot of good options. You have a lot of good skills like we mentioned right here. And then of course, like when you use your rightmost item, slow, like righty tighty. We'll go like righty tighty down here. Yeah, then of course you just like put the crit core on the right side. Very tight. Yeah, that's stuff that I'd be looking for. The crit core builds that I run into, and for the record, I'm like rank 250, 234 right now in Legend. I guess there's no MMR based matchmaking, so all of my experiential data, all of my anecdotes are just from playing a lot. They have nothing to do with rank. I apologize. The crit core builds that I run into that I am not at all scared of are when the crit core is all the way on the left and it's like a bunch of weapons and shit on the right side. Like when you run into that kind of thing, I'm just like not afraid at all of what might be going on there. Crit core scales so well because of the double proc, because of the skills that are available that like scale crit. I find myself really not prioritizing crit skills very often at all. But man, when you have the crit core, they skyrocket in value, which is pretty interesting. I've been rambling about 3 different archetypes here: Motherboard, the Proboscis, Slash. Oh god, I picked Weaponized Core. What am I supposed to do? And then this third one is kind of like a crit core stuff. We can scroll down. I think I can scroll down. Am I allowed to scroll down? I haven't talked much about the core, but I feel as though I should. So I'm going to pause for a second in case Twitch chat wants to participate as well. So what can you do with the core? Let's go back in. The core is fun because it allows you to pivot into anything. You can just put nonsense items on the right side and have a really good time. Like the large item for like, it's from the Triceratops guy. What's it called? It's like use all items. It's like a 15-second cooldown. Using that with the core is sick. It's so good. Yeah, Eclipse. There you go. The large item for destroy an item, I think is like destroy an item. I think that's like very usable when playing the core, because like you don't really have any direction built into your core itself, and you could just put a bunch of fast items on the left and put like some big fucking thing on the right side, and honestly it's quite good. What would I aim toward if I were using an Omega, no sorry, a default core? I'd probably aim to make use of one of the rays, because the rays are easy to pick up, they scale well, and they allow you to place everything on the left side, so you just proc the core over and over. So starting out, I would lean toward either being a burn build, not fire, but let's go burn. I'd lean toward either being a burn build or just a poison build. And the poison build might be like a bunch of haste items plus lizard, or it might be the chem snail thing that we talked about previously as well. You don't get the crit synergy, but like I still think the build like chem snail plus pylon would be the big thing you're looking for here. So pylon, obviously. I guess another shout out that I should list here in a slightly different color green. Is it the same green? Different color green. There you go. Is all right, pylon. And I think it's actually worthwhile to mention the plasma grenade. It got nerfed to an 8-second cooldown, but like it slows all the enemy items, which is pretty good when you have a chem snail on your board, because if you're slowing 6 items, that charges your chem snail 6 times, which is what, 6 times 9, or sorry, 6 times 3, 18 seconds worth of charging. And it also charges your core over and over, so you get more cool LED procs out of it. It just goes like boom, 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 boom. So like, you know, spending cooldown on a plasma grenade, I don't hate it. I'd be interested in something like that if I had some extra cooldown to play with, especially if I had a knee brace, right? So I think the plasma grenade is worth shouting out there. Are there other core builds you want to mention? There's fun mentions of Mamasaur and Crane. I don't think Mamasaur can win games anymore. I think poison builds and burn builds are too relevant, because like by the time that like it's kind of to an extent here as well, but by the time that you start destroying enemy items, you already have 1,000 burn on you or 1,000 poison on you. So like the destroying item stuff, like Mamasaur, like you just mentioned, you can't blow up a key item and save yourself. And in the past, when ailment builds like burn and poison were less common, you could, like, you know, they'd be like a core DPS build, or they'd be, I don't know, like a pulse rifle build, or like a force field build, or an armored core build, or sorry, not the armored core, what's it called? Combat core. They like a combat core build, and like if you just, man, if only I could blow up that one item, I'll be safe. You can't really do that against like the poison stuff and the burn stuff, because you already have a bunch on you, stacks on you, and they probably queued up more, and they'll just like keep adding to you even though you already blew up the item. So like I know I just mentioned the destroy an item thing, and it's fun, but like it kind of suffers in the same way the Mama Sword does. But you know, also this one gets what do you call it? This one gets charged, the Mama Sword doesn't. But yeah, you know, I think the use all item ones is more real. But you want some lifesteal, armor or something, crazy fucking damage, pretty good too. Let's go. Was it burn poison? What else did I say here? Combat core. Combat core is definitely real. There's a ton of skills that support cores and that work with like double core stuff. Combat core is still a very strong item. It just sucks when it gets frozen for 8 seconds at the beginning of combat. That's all. I don't like force field, but we already talked about force field. Like you can do force field on the armored core stuff. We said that at the very beginning. Are there any like specific core builds that come to mind for you? Like, I feel like like core is so flexible. I would love to see Tesla coil get buffed. This is my second time. Whoops, that's not how you spell Tesla. This is my second time bringing it up. I would love to see Tesla coil buffed because I think it'd be like really fun to use because of all the charging that goes on with the core. But I just don't think it's quite good enough right now, unfortunately. Is that enough rambling? Oh, somebody said crane as well. Listen, I've used crane before. It deals a fuck ton of damage. I've also never lost to a crane. I think generally it's a bit slow. It's also prone to getting frozen. And there's a lot of freeze in the game right now. Because the rule is C freeze, take freeze. C freeze, take freeze. And I think this rule right here is too ubiquitous to be relying on something like crane. Because it's just going to sit there and fucking die. Also, the prevalence of like all these archetypes where you put everything on the left side and you put the core on the far right side. The prevalence of that means that cool LED is a very strong item and a very common item. So like big cooldown items like crane, or you know, like Beast of Burden, for example. Like you're not going to get to use them twice. You're going to get to use them once, and you need to have it be an instant kill. Why is Beast of Burden a real item? Beast of Burden, Bob. Why is Bob a real item, but crane, I feel, is much less of an item? Because Beast of Burden builds have, you know, the good ones have like 40,000 life. And the crane builds are going to have like 10k life at the very most. Like 10k is a lot of dually life. That is a lot of HP for dually. But I die way more often to Beast of Burden than I die to crane. So I'm not going to bother including that here. What's the TLDR? This meme, motherboard's good. Proboscis, I wish were better. There's some other things we talked about. The core is pretty flexible, and because it's so flexible, you probably just end up doing this thing anyways. And I like Chem Snail. There, that's the big takeaway. Neat. I'll see you next time.